Mysteries abound around the world, from strange lights in the night sky to ghostly apparitions passing from one realm to the next. From the Great Pyramids of Egypt to what lies beneath the depths of Loch Ness. From Bigfoot to Atlantis, they are all mysteries waiting to be solved. Join Laurie Phillips, Lauren Smith, Graz, and Billy Simmons as they search for the truth on Night Callers Radio.
Hello and welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio. Today is January 28th, 2016, and we welcome all of you that are out there listening tonight to our show tonight. I'm here with Billy and Graz, and Miss Lauren is taking the night off. She still has not had her baby yet, but anytime now. We're all just waiting for little Xander Owen to make an appearance, but he hasn't yet. So, guys, How you doing tonight? I know, isn't it?
Poor thing.
Bless her heart. I know. I feel bad for her. She is just miserable, and she just really needed some rest. She's still working, and it's getting to the point where it's very difficult for her to do much more than just rest when she gets home. So, anyway, I imagine the next time she comes on, she'll be a few pounds lighter.
Let's see, what did Billy call it? An olive on a toothpick or something like that, Billy?
Yeah.
Yep, olive on a toothpick.
Skinny little thing with this great big boy hanging out, ready to come home.
I know. It amazes me how she stays so tiny. I remember when I was pregnant with her and my son, and I just got enormous all over. But she has just stayed. She did that last time too.
She's listening in, so I guess we better be kind.
Yeah, she probably is. So
which is against my nature, but that's all right.
I do have an interesting story to share.
Okay.
I had an attorney friend of mine come up to me the other day. He called me up there to have a private conversation with him. He said when he was at the dog park in Nacogdoches that he talked to two guys that lived out on the same farm road that leads to my house, and said that they had several Bigfoot sightings, were hearing vocalizations at night, and had been finding mutilated wild hogs. And I said, well, contact them and see where exactly on this farm road they are. Apparently, these two gentlemen live in a trailer. They're somewhere, but of course, there's multiple trailers along this road. But anyway, they said it was 3.5 miles from the loop all the way down to the river. Well, that didn't make any sense to me because it is another 7-8 miles to the river from that location. So I'm still trying to find out more information on that because I would like to go over and investigate that and find out what's going on. I looked
down there near you?
Yes. And I've had absolutely nothing going on in my neck of the woods. It has been the deadest fall and winter I've ever had since I have lived here. So, I'm just thinking it's very interesting.
Well, I guess cracking a 22 out your back door doesn't help the situation.
Well, no, and spotlighting hogs doesn't either because, they don't like lights. So, yeah, I probably have done everything under the sun to run them off, and we know, there are things you do and don't do. And so I have had other wildlife issues, so I've had to put that on the front burner, and I hate that, but that's it. So anything going on with you two that you want to share tonight, or any news, Bigfoot news, anything new out there?
Not with me. I still got to wait until this monsoon season stops. We had hail coming down today and almost coated the ground.
Wow.
It goes in between a little bit of hail, and a lot of wind, and a lot of rain. But, still got to wait a little.
Wow. Oh, gosh. in the wintertime. That's just crazy. We had that a couple of weeks ago. My fiance Mark was coming through Garrison, Texas, and saw what he thought was snow on both sides of the road. It was 60 degrees. He said, weirdest thing I ever saw. Well, it turned out it was hail. And they had so much hail that it looked like it had snowed.
Yeah, it's just the edge of a front going through, cold front hitting the warm front.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We get several of those a day, cold fronts hitting things this time of year.
Naturally, he thought it was a sign of the end times. And so, oh, my goodness. What about you, Bill? Anything going on there?
No, it's dead. It's like you. Mother Nature's bipolar. I mean, it's, one day it's 30-something, the next day it's 65 like today. And they're showing, we've got another really bad system coming in, talking more tornadoes and stuff here this next week. And like you, it's just dead out there.
Yeah.
Probably the deadest fall into winter that I've ever seen as well.
Well, I've never seen as many deer as I've seen, and wild hog and other wildlife abundantly, but no Sasquatch.
Right.
Well, ever since they cleared your land over there by the cemetery, they've moved down the street anyway. They're bothering that when they go through.
Most likely.
Yeah. It's crazy. It really is.
Well, if there isn't any more news, let's go ahead and get to our guest. I'm anxious to hear from him. And, Grouse, would you take that intro, please?
Here we go. Night Callers Radio presents Ohio researcher Paul Hayes. Paul was born and raised in Stark County, Ohio, and is currently 49 years old. Has been married for 28 years. He currently resides in East Canton, Ohio, and has lived there for 9 years. Paul was a firefighter for 25 years and was retired from Sandy Township Fire Department, where he taught classes of farm safety and rescue. He's also a small business owner of a well-established car repair facility and has been an automobile technician for 33 years. In his younger years, Paul believed in Squatch, but never pursued it until he had a Class A encounter near his home. Since that encounter, he has actively searched for answers concerning the Squatch phenomena since 2011. Paul currently has a small research team and also a Facebook group, the Genoska Project, going on 3,000 members. The Genoska Project also has a website at genoskaproject.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grass. Well, good evening, Paul. How are you doing? And welcome to Night Callers Bigfoot Radio.
Hi, guys. Glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. We're very honored to have you on tonight. We have had several requests to have you on the show. Other researchers from Ohio have highly recommended you, and it's been quite a chore. You've been a very busy man, and it's hard to get you at a point where you can actually come on the show. So we are extremely delighted to have you here.
I'm always digging into something, so. Well,
you were born and raised in Ohio, and in your younger years you had an encounter. Is that what got you started in this?
Well, my encounter was in 2011, and that's what got me started in all this. Growing up as a kid, I believed in that stuff, but I never encountered it, so I never pursued it. What I know now, and if I knew it back then, I probably would have started at an earlier age because, I pretty much grew up in the woods, my whole life. As a kid, we play in the creeks and rivers and just all kind of stuff. And, you would hear strange things, but you just wouldn't pay no mind to them, and so, you think back and, you just think of, some of the different things that you've heard while out in the woods when you were a kid, and, now it kind of makes you wonder, were you being watched, or, was there something there, or something like that, but yeah, I never really pursued it until, I had the crap scared out of me in 2011, so. And then, once that happened, you almost want to know more. You want to know more. You want to know why. You want to know what it is. Mhm.
Well, to me now, I grew up never knowing anything about Sasquatch. So what was it the Patterson Gimlin film, In Search of? What was it that piqued your interest as a young child? Or as a younger person?
Well,
to get introduced to it.
Yeah, I mean, you seen the Patterson Gimlin film, and then of course everybody's seen. What was the show? Was it Bionic Man or something? They had Bigfoot on TV. And
oh, awesome show too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Andre the Giant did that.
And then, once in a while you would, just see something Sasquatch related. It wasn't real big back then like it is today. So, aliens, I mean, stuff like that. I mean, I pretty much believe in all that. I mean, I won't get into the alien part, but, I did see a UFO back in 1978, which that made me about 12 years old. So, my mind is open, but, some of the stuff that people talk about, nowadays, I don't dig into none of that. I don't research any of it. Some of it just don't interest me, so.
Yes. And we have had some, I don't know, for lack of a better word, we've had some issues with some possible guests that were going to come on the show, and then I found out that they were believers of some pretty far out things, some real fringe element type things, and we here at Night Callers, we try to keep it real. And although I do believe in UFOs, and I think everybody here on this show, in fact, Bill's had a sighting of a UFO, and I never have, but and Grass has seen one too, and I would love to see one. I would absolutely love to see one, but I have yet to see one. And but could you, Paul, do you mind telling us about your 2011 encounter?
Yeah, well, it all originally started back in September. It would have been the early morning of the 6th in 2011, and I was just having one of those nights where I wasn't sleeping very well, so I stepped out on my back porch 2 a.m., and I might have been standing out there, just a few minutes, and, to my left, I heard this low guttural growl, roughly about 30 feet from me. Now, I have to tell you, about where my house is positioned and stuff. I live on a dead-end street, and my house is the last house on the right. And then right beside my house is a large cornfield, and then, of course, it's connected to, a large wooded area. And what divides, right on my property line, what divides, my property from the cornfield is a long row of pine trees, just a single line.
A shelter belt.
Well, no, this here is just a single line of pine trees that just kind of divide, my yard from this cornfield, because the cornfield's owned by a gentleman that lives up the street here.
Okay.
I mean, they're big enough that, if you sit out on the back porch, unless you kind of peek through a couple little openings, you'll never see the field. So, That's how big these things are. And these pine trees are only about 30 foot away from, where I was standing. So, I mean, like I say, I was out there just a few minutes, and I heard this low guttural growl. Now, the moon that night, it was almost full. I do recall that. And once I heard this growl, I just looked over to my left, but I'm not really seeing anything. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm hearing things or something, So I just continued to stand there, and maybe about a minute later, it did it again. So I looked over to my left. I still couldn't see what was doing it. I went back in the house. I went back to bed. The next night, it was pretty much almost the same scenario, except it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I didn't even give the previous night a thought, So I walked out on the back deck to have a smoke, and it was basically the same thing. I was out there a few minutes. Next thing you know, low guttural growl. I mean, it's loud enough that it kind of, you felt it. And
yes.
I'm looking over to my left, and I know I'm moving my upper body back and forth trying to, see through these trees, and, I didn't see nothing. So that's 2 nights in a row. I put my cigarette out. I went back in the house, and as soon as I entered through the French doors there to go into the house, my wife was up. And she's going to head out on the back porch. So I told her, I says, if you're going out there, I said, be careful, because now and last night, something growled at me out there. Well, then she proceeded to say, I know, I've heard that before.
Wow.
But she never said anything, And I'm pretty sure I gave her a look. But, yeah. She goes, yeah, I've heard that before, but she never said anything. Now, my wife, she believes they exist. She just don't believe they exist like in areas like this. She believes they, exist in the Appalachian Mountains or, something like that. But, yeah, so she's not really skeptic, but, so that's what happened, that night. And I was telling my oldest son about it, during the rest of the week there. And he says, well, he goes, I'll come over on Friday and we'll go check it out. I said, all right. So I get home from work roughly 5:30. And he's already here. And I took him through. Now, at the corner of my backyard, there's a tree line that runs east, and it's actually at the end of that cornfield. I had been through there before, and I seen just strange stick-type structures in there. Of course, I took some pictures of it. And I took him through there.
Were you thinking Bigfoot during this time? Possibly.
What's that?
Were you thinking Bigfoot at this time?
Well, at this time, no.
Okay.
But I took him through and I showed him all these little stick structures that didn't make any sense. And, they just didn't look like it was something naturally done. To me, it didn't anyway. So I took him through there, and then once you get end of that tree line, which is on the other side of the cornfield, there's a small opening between that tree line and then another tree line that runs north. And then soon as you get through that, there's a large grassy field. I mean, the grass can get 5, 6 feet tall in this area. And we walked into that, and then we got about halfway through that field, and we were looking over to our right, and I was pointing at some crabapple trees that were over there. And then just out of the corner of my left eye, on the other side of this field, I saw movement. And I couldn't tell you at the time, I couldn't tell you what it was. I couldn't tell you what color it was. You know, I just caught the movement, and then when I looked over, of course, there was nothing there. And then I asked my son, I says, did you see something move over there, you know, over there by this tree? And he said, no. And I said, well, let's go check it out. We finished walking across that field, and as soon as you get on the other side, there is a small feeder creek, you know, 2-3 feet wide. And then where I seen the movement was just on the other side of that creek. There is a smaller sapling that's right on the edge of, and then you can also see the deer trail that was used heavily because they had that ground wore down so far that some of the tree roots were showing. And, you know, sometimes, you know, I've been here, you know, roughly 9 years, and some years you would notice a whole lot of deer, and then some years you would, you know, only half. Or, you know, like this year here, I was lucky to probably see 4. So we crossed that little feeder creek, and we started to walk that deer trail. And I told my oldest son, I says, come down here on the side of this bank, and I'm going to look for some kind of prints or whatever. And he stayed up on the deer trail. It might have been 5 minutes or so, and, you know, he hollers for me. He goes, hey, Dad, come up here a minute. So I walked back up, and he's pointing at this tree. I'm going to guess it's 300 feet away. It's a really, really large tree, and it sits right on the edge of this feeder creek. And he told me, he goes, doesn't it look like there's something like right behind that tree? But it's so far away, I'm looking, and I said, I see something, but I can't tell you, if it's a log or a stump. I said, I can't. I said, but I see something. So I proceeded back down on the bank to check for prints. And like I say, another 5 minutes or so went by. And the only thing I really seen was deer prints and, small critters and stuff like that. And so I hopped back up on that deer trail, and I stood in the same exact spot, and I looked down at that tree again. Well, this time it looked different. And I told my oldest son, I says, whatever was there isn't there now. And he's looking, he goes, you're right. So we thought that was kind of odd. But still at this time, we're not really thinking Bigfoot, okay? Well, we finished following this deer trail right beside this feeder creek. That feeder creek runs into a much larger creek. There isn't a lot of water in it, but the creek itself is probably 12, 15 feet wide. And we came to an area that we could cross over. And once we got on the other side, I told my oldest son, I says, you go that way and I'll go this way. So he did. He went north a little bit and I went south, and just a few minutes later, I heard him holler for me. So I went over to his location, and I said, "What's up?" He goes, "Do you smell that?" And I said, "Yeah, but what is it?" He goes, "I don't know, but the odor is really bad." And I told him, I said, "Man, it almost smells like some kind of something dead, or like a musty smell, something." But it wasn't a distinct odor where you could, basically, identify it. It wasn't one single odor. It was like a combination of maybe 2-3 odors.
Right.
Well, where he was standing at, directly in front of him, was a small clearing, and the grass was like 10 inches tall. It was like really, really green. And then surrounding that small area was, some pretty thick brush, and it was kind of in the shape of a U. So I told him, I said, "Well, let's go in here to see what we can find." And we walked in, and we're kind of looking through the brush a little bit. I mean, you couldn't get through it, but we didn't see anything. Well, at this time it's probably 6:15. And I told him, I said, let's go back to the house, we eat dinner, whatever, and then, we'll come out, I don't know, tomorrow or something. And he goes, "Okay." So we cross that large creek. We get on the other side. We're walking that deer trail, that deer path, all the way back around, and he's in front of me. He's probably like 6 feet or so in front of me. And we get most of the way back, and we're probably 20 feet from where we crossed that little feeder creek from that field.
Mm.
And he just makes a dead stop in front of me, and I went, "Dude, what are you doing?" And he looks to his left now, and he says, "Look, right where I'm standing, there was a tree, some limbs, and, of course, there was still leaves on the trees. And I just looked to my left, but I didn't see anything." And I said, "What are you looking at?" Because he is standing here, and he's just staring at, at the time, I didn't know what he was staring at, but he was just staring at it. He wasn't moving. And I says, "What are you looking at?" So then he takes his finger, and he points, he goes, "Right there." So I hunched down a little bit, roughly 8 inches or something like that, to kind of, see underneath that limb. And there this thing stood about 120 feet from us, and it was standing right on what appeared to be our side of that large creek. And that moment on, I couldn't tell you how long the sighting was. It could have been 20 seconds. It could have been 2 minutes. I don't know, because, time was not a thing anymore. It was like time stood still, and I didn't take a camera or anything because I wasn't expecting to. I just went out just to take a peek, and I had a cell phone in my pocket, but the thought of that cell phone never crossed my mind.
It never does. That first sight.
When we're viewing this thing, it was the ugliest thing I've probably ever seen. And, the tree that it was standing beside, the one large limb that kind of came out, there was like a big knot on the side of that limb, and that's where the top of his head was. And at the time, I didn't estimate, how tall is this thing? I didn't think of anything like that. I'm sure my jaw was wide open. And my oldest son, he was 23 at the time. And, you know, he's 6'2", 300 pounds. So he a big boy, and he was scared to death. And
well,
like I
imagine.
say, you know, like I say, you know, we could have stood there for a couple minutes. I have no idea. And, you know, finally, you know, I think that he finally snapped out of it, or maybe we both did. And he goes, "I'm getting the hell out of here." I went, "Okay," you know. So we actually left the area before it did.
That's amazing.
And, yeah. You know, you hear all these sightings. You know, the creature sees a human and gone. Well,
yes.
See, here was the funny part about the whole ordeal. That thing knew we were there, but when it was standing over there by that large creek, you know, it was moving its upper body, you know, side to side. It was kind of looking in our direction, not directly at us, but in our direction. You know, it knew we were there, but I don't think it knew our exact location, and it was trying to find us. Because you could see, you know, he wasn't looking directly at us. He was looking a little bit more toward my left, and just rocking that upper body back and forth. You know, this thing had to go 500 pounds. He was just massive. And, you know, from my angle, you know, I can't tell you what all my son had seen, but, you know, my angle, you know, I could see this thing head to toe. But to me, it was standing a little bit of an angle. So, you know, I couldn't really, you know, I couldn't see the palms of the hands. You know, they were straight down. You know, one thing that I still thought was weird is, to me, the head of this creature looked too small for the body. And I also noticed that it was a round head, you know, wasn't coned, anything like that. It was a round head, you know, and of course no neck, but the head seemed too small for the massive size of the body. And, you know, it was like an auburn type color. And, you know, I didn't pay attention if it was male or female. You know, I know you couldn't see the ears. There was just too much hair. A lot of the hair was matted. You know, I couldn't really see the nose and the eyes. There was just a lot of facial hair on this creature. And, you know, the hair, you know, coming down over the forehead actually came down over the eyes, too. I mean, it was just a lot of facial hair, you know, just little things like that, you know, that stick out to me. You know, so after viewing it for however long, you know, I can't say, you know, 2 minutes or a minute or 30 seconds, but, you know, my son, he's scared to death, and he's going, "I'm getting the hell out of here." I agreed. And, you know, he says, "I don't know about you, but I'm running." I said, "No, don't run." I says, "We'll walk out, but we'll keep an eye behind us." And he goes, "Well, okay." So once we finished walking that path and he got across that little feeder creek, he was doing like one of them walk, run kind of things. And, you know, and here I am trying to, you know, keep up, and I'm looking behind me, but I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing it follow us or anything like that. And, you know, we took a little shortcut. You know, we didn't go up through that one tree line. We cut directly across that cornfield. And just as we stepped into my backyard, as soon as we stepped into my backyard and we both turned around to look in the direction, that we had came from. There was 2 loud tree knocks that came from that area, but a little to our left. And my oldest son looks at me and goes, "Did you hear that?" And I went, "Yes, I did." And, and at the time, your adrenaline's pumping and, you're going, what happened? What,
yeah.
You're just going, what? And my older boy, he's still shaking a little bit, and then, the more I keep thinking about it, and, the tree knocks, why did that thing do that? Why was there 2 knocks? And then the more and more I think about it, is there had to have been another one in the area.
Mm.
I'm thinking this one signaled that the 2 humans are gone, but that's what I'm thinking. I mean, otherwise, why would it do that if there wasn't another one in the area,
I would like to share something with you that's very interesting. I have a research area that when I enter the research area, enter into the woods, I hear a knock. And then the entire time I'm in there, I hear nothing. But as soon as I exit the woods, I hear a knock. So I don't know if they may have been knocking to signal that there were 2 of you and you both left the woods.
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, this happened, in 2011. Even today, I keep thinking, that thing knocked twice. It had to notify, there had to have been another one in the area. I'm not going to say there was a family of them there, but, there had to have been another one. Otherwise, why would it do that? It just doesn't make any sense. It had to have been signaling, so.
So how did you and your son handle it after that? Did you sit down and talk it out, or did he not want to talk about it anymore?
There for a little while. He didn't say much about it. And I know I had to have time to myself to render in my mind what happened, why it happened, why was I chosen to have it happen. You just different things go through your mind,
Yeah, but did you have any context to relate that to?
What's that?
Did you have any context to relate that to?
Well, what I did after this thing, and it was probably a couple weeks later, and during those couple weeks, I sat in my family room, and I'm on the computer, and I'm typing in Bigfoot, and I come up with all this stuff that comes up. Then I start typing in Bigfoot research, and the first one that came up on my search was a group down in Cambridge, and it's run by Doug Waller. And I contacted him. I knew at the time, I knew nothing about this thing. I knew nothing about, how to go about, why, or, why is it here? And, I was not freaking out, but I'm wondering why, and so I contacted them. Well, Doug and his team actually, they scheduled a time, and they came up here to investigate it. and they were here. They were here a good majority of a day, and I took them back, and we looked around, and I showed him everything, and I even showed him some of these structures that we found, and a really weird one. It was like a whole limb, like jammed on the side of this tree. I showed him all that, and then some of his team members actually stayed here. What they did, they stayed out in their van in the driveway here. The driveway goes around the back of the house, and then they would take a walk through the woods at night, just different things like that. And at the time, I don't know what they're doing, but they're here doing it, and so that was the very first people that I had come out and investigate it. I did contact the BFRO because I had found them. I contacted the BFRO about this. It took them a while. The BFRO is big. They got, a lot of reports and, stuff like that. So I did contact them. But in the meantime, I would sit on my computer and just pull up different things. Then I decided that I would, see Bigfoot in Stark County. And I happened to pull up this report on the BFRO site. And back in 1978, there was a sighting by a gentleman, and it didn't give the specific address, but it gave the street name, and it said East Canton. So that caught my attention, and I read through the whole report. Well, here, this gentleman, my street dead ends on my end, and then once you take it to the main road, just go across the main road, it continues on, and it dead ends on the other end, too. It's the same scenario. You got the gentleman that had the sighting, his house is on my road. His house is the last house on the right, and there's a cornfield at the end of it. It's the same setup. So I'm reading this report, and this happened back in 78, which is also the same year as the Minerva Monster, which is only 10 miles from me.
Wow.
But this gentleman said his dogs were at night. I think it was about 11 o'clock. His dogs were out back carrying on, barking and all that. So he took food out to quiet the dogs up so his neighbors didn't complain. And he got halfway back to the house, and he saw this thing standing in the cornfield, but at that time there was still corn in his field, and he said the corn stalks were, roughly 6 foot tall, and he says this thing was another 2-3 feet above that. And he said he locked eyes with it for about 30 seconds, scared the hell out of him. He said he ran back in the house, grabbed his shotgun, and hid behind his lazy boy chair. And then he kept thinking, well, if that thing, as big as it is, if it comes into my house, this gun's going to do me no good. So yeah. It's the same type scenario, and it's the same type of setup as far as the house and the cornfield and the wooded area and all that. And so that was 78, and like I say, 1978, the big deal with the Minerva Monster.
Could you tell our listeners about the Minerva Monster, because they may not know the story about that?
Well, the Minerva Monster was a big thing. There's a documentary out called the Minerva Monster. You know, you can buy it online. I'm actually in that, by the way. But
Hey.
yeah, Minerva Monster. Back in '78, there was this Caton family. They had a rash of sightings on their property. You know, this thing kept coming around, kept coming up to the house, looking through the window. According to the one Caton family member that they interviewed, you know, it was back when, you know, they were kids and stuff, and they actually set out looking for this, and supposedly a bunch of the kids, they actually came across this thing, tackled it, knocked it on the ground, and it bit one of the kids, threw the rest of them off, and then took off. You'd almost have to watch this documentary because, you know, they interview other people that's directly in that area also, you know, about different things that they had saw or, you know, heard or, you know, anything like that. And my brother-in-law at that time, he lived across the street from the Caton family that was having all these sightings. And, you know, I've known my brother-in-law for, you know, 30 years, and up until, might as well say, a year ago, I did not know that he knew about this and that, you know, his dad had an encounter just directly across the street, because my brother-in-law lived you know, right there. I think he said he moved, well, him and his dad moved there in 1956. And he said this Minerva Monster thing did not start in 1978. He goes, it started back in the 50s. And I'm going, really? You know? And he said, yeah. I was telling the guys that were putting on the documentary for the Minerva Monster, and he says, man, can you get him to do an interview? And I'm like, well, all I gotta do is ask. So at first he didn't want no part of it. He goes, no, I'm not getting in front of no cameras. I'm not doing none of that, you know, and you know, which is fine. And then, you know, one day he got a hold of me. He goes, all right, I'll do it, but only if it's at your house. Okay. So it shows him sitting on my couch, you know, it's in my family room. That's where he felt most comfortable on doing it. And so he told the story, you know, even back in, you know, like 1956, where he said back then, you know, they had the outhouse, and he said the outhouse was a good 100 feet from the house, and he said it was late at night, and his dad went out to the outhouse, and then his dad, you know, heard these strange noises, and he looked out the little window on the door and seen something really large run right through the backyard. He said, you know, his dad was probably out there for 2 hours because he was too afraid to run to the house. But you know, finally he did, yeah. He goes, that Minerva Monster thing started way back in the 50s. You know, he goes, it was way before 1978. There is a lot, you know, if you go just like a 10-mile radius, you know, from my home, there is, you know, a lot of activity. There is a lot of reports, you know, of different things going on. And, you know, since I started doing this in 2011, you know, just the word getting out, you know, I've had people contact me and go, hey, so many years ago, January or whatever, I seen something that, it wasn't right. And you just get more and more. And, the activity that I had at my home in 2011, that one were those 2 nights that I got the growls. And, a few days later, actually witnessing this thing, it did not stop there. That was in September, the first week of September, roughly. It went all the way into December. I would have different things, happening. And, I have a fire ring in the back corner of my backyard, right by that tree line. And one day my wife just happened to look out the window and she said, "Who put them rocks on there?" And I'm like, "What rocks?" She goes, "There's rocks on the top of your fire ring." I went, "I don't know." So I walk out and I use those landscaping bricks, and my fire ring, I got it. It's round, but I use them landscaping bricks, and there was 4 white rocks. There was, one on each brick, and they were pretty much in the center. There was 4 of them, and you saw I'm going out, and I'm going, why would there be white rocks on my fire pit? It just didn't make any sense. And we've had things like one night. Well, my youngest son, back then, he would have been about 7. He had a skateboard on the back porch, and it was leaning up against the corner by the door where you walk in the house. And we were all sitting in the living room, which is right there, and we heard this loud noise, and we all just kind of like looked over at the doorway, and it was at night, and I open up the door, and I'm looking out to see, what that loud noise was. Well, here's that skateboard that was leaning up against the corner. It was all the way on the other side of the porch, and it was flipped upside down. So something moved it a good, 15 feet anyway. And it was loud. It caught our, we got the TV and stuff in there, and, it was loud enough that it caught all of our attention, to where I had to go look. And, now I'm thinking, now, what the heck was that? And then there was another time, I can't tell you exact month on it, but we have little Pomeranian. He's just a little thing, and he thinks he's 6 feet tall because he goes after anything.
I know, I had a dog just like that.
Yeah, and I can tell you it was about 9:30 at night. We took the dog out so he could do his little business, and my oldest son that was with me during the sighting, he's standing in the backyard, and at the end of my backyard, there's another single row of pine trees, and then behind that is a hayfield. I'm standing at my garage door opening. We got the garage door open, and my house was kind of like an L shape, so you got to go around the back of the house to get in the garage. Well, the door's open. I'm standing right there, and my oldest son, he's a good 20 feet or so from me. He's standing in the backyard, and the dog's out there doing its business. And I look up because I noticed something on the other side of these pine trees. I'm not saying a word. I'm just observing. And I see these really large eyes on the other side of these pine trees. And I went, oh, no. You know, because I know if my dog sees it, he's going after it.
All right.
So I didn't say anything to my son because I already know, you know, it would have scared him half to death. And I'm just keeping an eye on the dog. Finally, the dog looks over and sees what I'm looking at, and he's focused on it, and he's standing on 3 legs. He's got the other paw up in the air. I mean, he's focused on this thing. And I went, oh, no, because I know what he's going to do. And finally, he just takes off running toward these trees. And, you know, I have a second car or a second garage out by these trees here. And as soon as my dog gets pretty much at those pine trees, you've seen this thing, you've seen the eyes turn to its left, and then my dog goes to the right. So, you know, the turning of the eyes and the dog going in that direction. The dog gets through the trees, out of sight, you know, dark. And as soon as he does, I hear the dog just yelping and screaming, you know, and it's like something tearing this thing apart. I'm like, oh, my God.
Oh, no.
So I run into the house, and I get my flashlight. I mean, I wasn't even gone. I was moving. I wasn't even going 10 seconds. And my boy ran to his truck, got his flashlight. As soon as we got back out, here comes the dog. He is hauling ass, and he runs into the garage, and I let him in the house, and then I told my boy, I says, you go that way, I'm going this way. So we work our way back to that hayfield, and then this hayfield is pretty wide, and then there's another line of trees on the other side of it, and I'm just painting my flashlight across this field. And then once I went past this certain area, my boy pushed my arm back to the left. He goes, look. Well, now we're seeing like a large shadow standing in this tree line on the other side of this hayfield. And I went, wow, you know, and so we ended up walking back to the house. Here comes my wife. She's holding the Pomeranian. And this dog, I mean, he is shaking bad. And she goes, what did you do to my dog? I'm going, I didn't do nothing to your dog. I said,
the dog
whatever that thing is out there, that's what happened to your dog. I said, we didn't do anything. I said, he seen it. He went after it. He started squealing like a pig and yelping, and next thing I know, he's hauling ass back to the house. So, you know, I said, we didn't do nothing, you know, and just different things like that would happen all the way up until basically New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve, we had just a handful of us here at the house, because we don't go anywhere on New Year's Eve. We stay home. Well, come about midnight, some of my kids' friends decided they were going to stop over, and we're all out back. We're all standing in the driveway. I'm standing in the doorway of the garage. Garage door's wide open, and I mean, these kids were loud. I mean, they were so loud. And I'm just standing there. I'm not saying nothing. And I look over at this tree line, and I see these 2 large eyes about 4 foot up from the ground. I didn't say anything. Yeah, I didn't say anything. And they're all carrying on. They're laughing. They're talking. They're yelling, whatever. And finally, I told my oldest son, I said, come over here a minute. And I says, look over there in that tree line. Tell me what you see. He looks over and he goes, where? I said, can you see where that one neighbor's porch light is shining through the trees? He said, yep. I said, look below that. And then he finally spotted it. He goes, oh, my God. I said, yeah. I said, that's it again. So I went in the house. I got my flashlight. And I said, come on. So we walked out through the backyard, and we walked right to I'm still in my backyard, but I walked right to the end of that tree line. And that flashlight I got is like 2,000 lumen, so, it's pretty bright. And I shined the light right down through the center of that tree line, and the only thing you could see was like a dark figure, but it was looking back at us, and then it just turned its head and was gone. And then that is the last time or activity that I had around here.
So you shined that light right in its eyes?
Well, I just shined it in that direction, where it was probably, by the time we got there, it was probably halfway down through the center of that tree line.
Yeah.
But that's the last activity that I had around here. Even to this day, there's been nothing. Then I can tell you that I did talk to a lady. She lives basically maybe a quarter mile, maybe half mile from where I live. She lives up the one main road, and the wooded area that we had our encounter in is the same connected wood area that she has behind her house. And roughly 2 months after my sighting, her 12-year-old daughter was out back playing a flute. She was practicing for a band or whatever she was in. And she was sitting right at the back of the house, and she's playing this little flute. And then the distance from there to the wooded area is probably a couple hundred feet, and this is in an afternoon right after school. So, it wasn't dark out or anything. And she went and got her mom. She said, something's over there in them trees looking at me. So her mom went out and just stood right beside her and told her to keep playing that flute. And she would watch this thing peek out from behind the tree and then, hide back and then peek out. And she said, did that for, a few minutes or so. And then, then she kept thinking, some other things that happened, but I never knew what it was. And she said, if you want to go back and take a look, you're more than welcome because I own that area. She says, me and my kids used to go in them woods and we would camp back there. And she says one night we were camping and something was messing with our tent. And, she said it scared us half to death. And she says to this day, we will not go in them woods. And my tent and everything that we had is still back there. She said, you're more than welcome to go back and look.
Wow.
So we did. We went back. Yep, that tent is still there. You can tell it had been there for quite a long time, and it's all leaf covered, and you could see where they had their little fire pit, and just all kind of stuff back in there. And we took a look around. We didn't really see too much other than what she says we left behind because we won't go in there no more. And just talking to her, she goes, I don't know what it is or what it was, but it scared us all half to death. We wouldn't even, get out of the tent and run back to the house. We stayed in the tent that night, but we've never been back. We've never been to collect anything. It's still back there. So,
Wow.
and this is only, a half a mile from
where they live.
Yeah, and that tent incident, that wasn't in 2011. That was prior to 2011, my encounter. That was prior to that. We're talking, a year prior to that. And yeah, she will not enter them woods. And she said, once in a while she has a horse, and she said once in a while something will spook the horse, and the horse will go in the barn and won't come back out. Just different things like that. It's like this area is just, I'm not going to say it's infested with, Bigfoot activity, but
it's definitely habitated.
It's, it's pretty hot, and it seems like sometimes sometimes, things are more heavier than other times, but yeah, it's amazing. I've had people contact me where they had a sighting. I had a gentleman contact me, but, this was clear back in, I think he said 2001, and, he told me exactly what happened, and he did find a footprint in the side of the bank, and then he did go back the next day, and he did cast it, and then he had, at the time back then, Don Keating was, real big in the Bigfoot thing, and he had his girlfriend take it to Don Keating for him to look at it, but he contacted me and told me exactly where it was, and, so I did. I went back and I kind of looked the area over, and that area where he had that sighting, that property is like 1,800 acres. Definitely a lot of wooded area, and, there used to be a brickyard back in there, but, that's all been closed for many, many years, so, yeah, just, in that area there, that's only a mile tops from me.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's like this whole area, and then even if you go, I used to investigate a piece of private property in Carroll County, which is...
Paul, could you hold that thought and let us go to intermission?
Yeah.
And when we come back, well, I'm going to marking it down that you're going to talk about Carroll County when we come back. We are really, truly enjoying your I love the way you relate your stories. You're extremely believable, and I can relate to you. I really can, because it's very similar to the experiences when I first moved into a neighborhood. I didn't realize it was a Bigfoot hotspot. It has many of similar things happening to me. So
right.
I think this is fantastic. Anyway, we will be back, everyone. We're going to take a break now. Be back in 9 minutes, 24 seconds. Raz, if you'll roll that intermission. Everyone go get a drink, and we'll be back soon. Welcome back. That was the Rolling Stones, for anybody out there who didn't recognize them. Billy's favorite, not. I had no idea Billy was not a big fan of the Rolling Stones. Like, what is wrong with Billy?
Like Rolling Stones,
Yeah, the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, what was Bob Dylan off or what? No, I'm just playing.
Well, our guest tonight is Ohio researcher Paul Hayes, and he has been telling us about his experiences, and they're just absolutely amazing. And so we're bringing Paul back. Paul, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, you left off. You were fixing to tell us a story about Carroll County. So can you go ahead and I wanted to say that Paul was feeling a little under the weather tonight. So Paul, if you feel like you can't make it the rest of this show, please let us know, and we'll call it a night early for you if you.
No, we're good to go. We're good to go.
Okay, good. I'm so glad to hear that. So are our listeners. So go ahead, carry on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Carroll County, that's only basically 25-minute drive from where I live. And, one day at my shop, me and one of my employees, we were discussing Bigfoot. And this gentleman comes in, and he's standing there at the counter, and, he's just listening. He's not saying a word. He's just listening to what, we're talking about. And then, my employee, he walks out in the shop, and then this gentleman says, can I talk to you for a minute? I said, yeah. He goes, I see you guys were talking about Bigfoot. I said, yeah. He goes, did you, see one? Or I said, yeah. He goes, well, I got something weird going on my property, and I don't know what it is. He goes, I'll hear these howls, and he says, once in a while something will, in the middle of the night, will come up and smack the side of my house and rattle the pictures on the wall. And he says, he goes, I own about 100 acres, it sits out in the middle of nowhere, and his house, big long driveway, and the house sits up in the woods on, kind of like on a big hill. And he says, and another thing too, he says, I have a bear dog that I'll take, to different places and hunt bear. And he says, I have a hybrid wolf. And he says, I'll get up in the morning and, one or both of my dogs will be cowering on my porch. And he says, I try to call them back to, to chain them back up because they would break the chain and they wouldn't budge. He said, I'd literally have to drag them back to their dog box. And he says, the one day, he says, the one dug a hole underneath my shed and was under there. He goes, I don't know what the heck is going on. He goes, more than welcome to take a look. I says, all right. I says, we'll come out and take a walk around, just different things like that, just to see what we come up with. And at first we didn't really come up with anything, and then, we would just take some day hikes through the property. I tend to do, a handful of day hikes so I can get used to the property layout, before I do anything at night, because, at night, the whole thing changes. I mean, it's a totally different deal then, You can hike a piece of property many, many times, but the minute you enter it at night, it's a whole new feel. It's totally different. And so, we decided, well, maybe we'll come out and we'll spend the weekend. We'll spend the weekend out here. He goes, man, whatever you guys need, he goes, whatever you guys need. If you need to use ATVs, I got them, whatever you need. So we started spending weekends on this property, and the longer that we were there, the more activity seemed to be picking up a little bit. Now, this whole area, it's just rolling hills, and it's just rolling hills, and there's a lot of farmland. There's basically about a quarter of a mile, not even that, there is a fruit farm real close to him. So we're kind of, scoping out the whole entire area. And then there was a gentleman that lives maybe a mile or two from him, you know, on the secondary road. And this gentleman came across some deer that were laying in the brush with the bellies ripped open. And he goes, when he first seen these, he said there were three. There were 3 deer, and they were kind of somewhat in a circle. He said then a couple of days later, there was a total of 5. The gentleman really wouldn't. Yeah, the gentleman really wouldn't talk to us directly about it because he didn't want to. He didn't want it to be noticed. You know, he wanted to kind of keep it to himself. But being that we were there and we knew the landowner, you know, he talked a little bit about it, but he wouldn't, you know, he wouldn't do an interview. He wouldn't do anything like that. You know, so we started going there on this property quite often. And then in 2012, yeah, it was 2012, and it was getting more toward the end of the year, fall. I had probably 6 to 8 people that I took with me because, you know, what we would do, we'd go in the woods at night and, you know, we'd be stationed throughout this property, and we had 2-way radios. And one night, me and my partner, there was a bunch of large rocks in this area sitting on the hillside. Me and him were sitting on top of this rock. It's pitch dark. It's, you know, it's probably about 10 o'clock. And we sat there quietly. And, you know, no flashlights, no nothing. And then we just kept an eye, you know, around our immediate area. And we looked down, not directly below us, but to our left. We saw these large eyes peeking out from this other large rock that was in the area. And, you know, I nudged my partner and I said, you know, look down there. And then we would just kind of keep an eye on it. You know, it would look at us and then you wouldn't see it. Then you would see it, then you wouldn't see it. And this went on for like 15 minutes. And this was probably, I would guess, about 75 feet. And so I radioed up to the other team members. I said, hey, we got something, you know, some kind of activity down here. I said, it keeps, you know, peeking around this large rock. And, you know, I said, it's been about 15 minutes now. So we kept an eye on that area, and we didn't see it, and we didn't see it, and we didn't see it. So then I looked to my immediate left, and there's a small ATV trail that runs down through there. And this thing was right on the edge of that trail, and he was behind some trees, and he was looking at us. And then the next thing you know, he shot across the trail and started heading up the hill. So I radioed, you know, some of my team members because I knew that their position was right above where this thing was going up. And I told them, I says, it's heading your way. So the one gentleman, he took a glow stick and he had it hanging from a tree, and he says he hung it like 6 foot from the ground. And a few minutes later, after I notified him, he hollers back and he says, you're not going to believe this, but something just walked past that glow stick because I seen it, you know, the glow stick disappear, and then, you know, like you'd walk in front of it. And he says it's heading down toward the swamp. And, you know, this property had a pretty large swampy area. That would really make your hair stand on end. I mean, it was real freaky back in there, you know, and just a bunch of these little things, you know, what happened. And one night in the fall in 2012, we would set every time we go on a little research deal, we would set recorders out. And a lot of times we'll block off the little red light with some tape or something. And we'll set recorders out, and we'll let them things record all night long, and pretty much the whole time we're there. And we were all actually, we had ate dinner, stuff like that, and we were all sitting around the campfire. And then the next thing you know, we heard these really long howls. And, you know, two of us were lucky to record that. And it just, everybody, you know, everybody was talking, and they just kind of just shut up and just kind of looked in that general direction, because it was just so intense. I mean, you had to have been there. I mean, if you listen to the audio, you know, it isn't pronounced, you know, because it did sound like it was roughly about a half a mile away. And it was just ongoing things like that, you know, that we would hear or see. We did cast a couple prints. One was a 13-inch print, and one was a 9-inch print. And the weird thing about the 9-inch print is it looked like, the way the cast came out, it looked like it had a protruding middle toe. And the distance between the two prints was probably, you know, like 20, 25 feet apart. So now we're thinking, well, we must have an adult, we must have a juvenile in this area. You know, we would find, you know, deer bones and stuff, you know, all over the place. And the landowner himself had found a large buck. He said this buck had to go 200 pounds, and he found it laying, you know, up in the woods with a broken neck. And he says it was so fresh that rigor mortis had not even set in yet. He said you could just pick the head up by the antlers and just move it all around. He goes, the neck was definitely broke. He goes, me and my buddy rolled it over. We looked for, you know, gunshot wounds, arrow wounds, any kind of thing, and he said there was nothing. You know, so just different things just kept adding up and adding up and adding up. And, you know, also, you know, we continued on researching this property for, well, into 2013. And at the time, my co-founder of, you know, the Tenasqua Project, him, his wife, the landowner's wife, they were all down at base camp, and it is going on midnight. I took the rest of my team. We went up in the woods. We was walking the ridge, and they was trying to contact us over the radio, but we just must have been in that one area that there was no signal. And then finally, they finally got through to us, and the landowner says, hey, I took the ATV up over the ridge down in the swamp, and he said there was this putrid smell, and he says it was so strong, and he says, I don't feel right. He goes, something's wrong, something's going on. He goes, where are you guys at? And I told him, he goes, I wouldn't recommend going down into that swamp area. He goes, you know, don't go down there. Well, we went down there anyway. And, yeah, we went down there anyway, and the closer we got
Spoken like
down
a true
to,
researcher.
yeah, we got down there, and, you know, once we hit this area where there was this putrid smell, and it was really, really strong. Contacted the landowner. I says, hey, meet us, you know, down here in this area. And he says, no, I don't want to go down in there. I do not want to go. You know, so finally he decided he would, you know, meet us down there in the ATV. and he came down. But in the meantime, my co-founder, his wife, and the landowner's wife was still at base camp. Now, the base camp was like basically in the middle of this field that he owned, and the tree line was, 120 so feet away from base camp. And then the next thing I know, my co-founder, he hollers over the radio. He says, "You guys got to get back here right now, because this thing is just inside the tree line, and it's standing here watching us as I speak."
Wow.
So I hopped on the back of the ATV, the landowner, we were flying through the woods, and he gets me back to base camp. And this whole time I have my audio recorder. It's on, it's recording. And I get back, and, them three are like so excited, and they're just, oh my God, and they're just going on and on. So one of them said, bring your night vision over here, because I got night vision binoculars. And they said, see that small opening in the tree line there? And I said, yeah. So I got my binocular out, and here I am. I'm looking at this thing, and it's standing kind of between two trees. And it's just, it's moving around a little bit, and it's just watching us. And we're talking a good 15 minutes. And then we're still waiting on the rest of my team to get back to base camp, because, of course, they're walking now. And, we're watching this thing, and then it kind of disappeared. And, I'm looking around here. All it did was it just hunched down, So, basically I had two sightings, but, I don't claim the second one because, it wasn't me that actually spotted it. So, we watched this thing for about 15 minutes, and then, I told him, I says, I'm going in. And I started heading toward the tree line, and once this thing seen that we were coming, it just took off up the hill, and then you see the branches moving and, all that stuff like that. So, we hung out, that night. We camped out. And then the next morning, I got up, whatever it was, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I headed over to that tree line. And, yeah, there was definitely something, standing there, because the vegetation is all smashed down, in that area. And, it was just a ongoing type, situation, just different strange things happening. We captured howls. Well, matter of fact, another gentleman that was on my team at the time, he captured a set of howls that I didn't, and they're pretty good. There was a time, and I've never shared it, but I picked up some type of language on my recorder, and we timestamp our recorders, so it was about roughly 1:30 in the morning, and it had to have been roughly in the tree line area, and it was some type of language. And I've analyzed it, and I cannot tell you what is being said. It's just got like a weird dialect to it. I've had this recording. Well, I've had that recording, that I just held on to. I don't put it out in the public. I don't do anything like that. I did have, just recently, I sent it out and had it analyzed by another gentleman, because that's what he does, for the Olympic project.
Was it R. Scott Nelson?
Pardon?
Was it R. Scott Nelson?
No, wasn't him.
Okay.
And this gentleman kind of got back fairly quick, and he said, what we need to do, we kind of need to recreate, with the same people and all that. He says, it sounds somewhat human, but not human. And he says, I got a general idea of what it says, but, just trying to finalize, the audio, he says, we'd almost need to get back on the property, and everybody that was there, we need him to, need everybody to say, this same thing, and then analyze it and compare it to what you recorded, and a big thing like that. So I just got that information today. So, it's been an interesting,
definitely
time since 2011. Some of my other team members, I have Julie Wrench in Southwest Ohio. She's currently working on an investigation that the gentleman says he has ongoing activity and, just a bunch of weird things going on. I got Larry Proctor. He is down in around central Kentucky. He's working on a Class A sighting that happened a couple weeks ago. So, Kentucky's been, pretty hot. We have Jeffrey Zemecki. I hope I pronounced that right. If not, he's going to kill me. But, he's in northwest Pennsylvania. He's been going out researching. He's had his own sighting. Then, we also work, with some other groups, that are here in Ohio and, some like right on the Ohio-PA border. So if we would get something, more toward that way, we just pass it on to them, let them investigate it. We don't mind working with other groups, whatever it takes to solve the mystery.
We do have a question from the chat. Lori 103 wants to know, have you ever done investigations in Jefferson County or heard of any Bigfoot activity in that area?
No, I've never done anything in Jefferson County. The main counties that I do, I do Stark County, I do Carroll County, I do Columbiana County, and then all last year, pretty much every weekend, I've been doing research in Harrison County. Harrison County, there seems to be a lot of activity down there. I did speak to a few people down there that, encountered, what they consider, it kind of sounds like coyote, but it's not, So, that's how they explain it. They go, well, it kind of sounds like a coyote, but it's not a coyote. It's
yeah.
bigger than that, but it kind of sounds like, but it's not a coyote. And a gentleman told me that, for the past couple years, not all the time, but just once in a while, he goes, man, I'll hear these howls, and it's like, I don't know what it is. He goes, I'm not going to say it's Bigfoot, and I'm not going to say I believe in Bigfoot, but it's not a coyote, so, and then I did speak to, down in Harrison County, Clendenning Lake, I did speak to a, lady that works at the marina, because I would go to areas, I'll take my boat, and I'll go to areas that you can only get to by boat, okay? I did find some strange things, and I did find roughly a 16-inch footprint, and then I was just talking to the lady at the marina, and I said, Bigfoot's around here, you know that? And she goes, yes, I do know that, because I almost hit one with my car one night.
Oh, wow.
I went, what? She goes, yeah. She goes, I was on my way to my dad's house. She said it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I'm traveling down Route 800. And she says, this thing ran right out in front of me. She says, I was almost at my dad's house. And she said, I slammed on the brakes, and it just kept going and went up through the corner of the cemetery and was gone. I went, really? she goes, yeah. She goes, then once I pulled in my dad's driveway, my dad came out and wanted to know, what the tire squealing thing was. And, she said, I like almost hit something like tall and hairy, so. And then I started putting two and two together. The gentleman that hears the howls, when I asked him which direction that they were coming from, and he points in a direction, well, the direction he points in is Route 800.
Wow.
So then I'm going, okay, so he's hearing howls from, that direction, Route 800 area. She almost hits one with her car. So you just kind of, a lot of times you just kind of got to listen to what, people say, and then just start putting pieces of the puzzle together. And then, that's where you want to focus, your research. So I've been doing Harrison County all last year pretty much. Yeah, it was pretty much every weekend, Friday through Sunday. I'd be down there.
Wow.
So around this area, Harrison County, that's an hour drive for me. So, but, just this area, it's like, I don't know if it's just strange that there's that much activity.
Yes. Why do you think that is? Surely you must have some.
Well, Ohio pretty much is activity all around, isn't it?
Well, in Ohio
seems to be the busiest state that I've seen.
Well, Ohio supposedly ranks whatever, number 3 or number 4 in the country, but
right.
It seems like there is more activity on the eastern side of Ohio than there is on, middle or western side of Ohio. And I really don't know why. I haven't really figured that out. But I do know, if it has any bearing on it or not, but I do know the whole eastern side of Ohio is full of caves and mines. Okay? I do know that there is, I've done a little research on it. I do know that there is 800 known, this is known, there's actually more, but until they find all the openings, there's 800 openings on the eastern side of Ohio, running north to south. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Then again, you also got Salt Fork State Park, which is about an hour south of me. Pretty much a straight shot. There's a lot of activity down that way too. There has to be some reason why the majority is on the eastern side. There is activity throughout Ohio, but majority is on the eastern side for some reason. I don't know why yet.
Because the geography is the same on both sides of the state?
No, it does differ.
Yeah, it flattens out a little bit heading out toward Indiana.
Yeah, the eastern side of Ohio has a lot more rolling hills and, caves and mines and, that sort of thing versus the other side of the state. So, and I think, can't swear to it, but, a lot more farming on this side versus the other side.
I wonder if the caves and mines are places where they may hole up or use as shelter. What do you think about that?
I've thought about that, and I've also thought about, could they be using, mines or caves or whatever to get from point A to point B, without being seen. Just so many things that could be, but until you can, if you even ever find out why. But I just kind of keep a map type thing, sightings, daytime or nighttime. And then also, when I go through and I read reports, and people say, okay, I was heading down, route whatever, and, this thing ran in front of me, or I seen it cross the road, or, something of that nature, and it went from the right side of the road to the left side of the road. Well, majority of these reports, if you actually map out the area, these things, when they're seen, they're not going east and west. They're going north and south on the majority of the reports.
Do you notice on these reports any particular time of year where they seem to be more reports, or moon phases, more reports during the full moon? Any correlations like that?
Well, the majority of the sightings, like here in eastern Ohio, stuff like that, a lot of them are in the fall. I mean, there is quite a few in the spring. Some years, you might get a few stray sightings, during the summer. And then, it's like every year it differs. I mean, one year you might have more activity during the summer months than you will the next year or the year before. There's like no particular pattern, but, I can say, in the fall there seems to be more activity, and, in the spring there seems to be more activity. I don't really think it makes too much of a difference on moon phase, anything like that.
Let's see. What kind of equipment do you use?
Well, I mean, I pack my backpack with, just your basic survival stuff. I mean, I do have a night vision binocular made by Yukon, and for a $200 unit, that thing works extremely well. I've used more expensive units, and the one I have seems to be clearer. I mean, it does have a greenish tint to it, but I use that. I have a couple small, cheap pocket recorders, and then I got an H2 recorder, a little bit more money, but that's what I use. I rarely will set out a trail cam, rarely, anything like that. But I try to keep it light, because I'm not going on extended hikes, for days or whatever. But so I try to keep it as light as I can.
You carry any video cameras or anything?
I used to take out a camcorder. I don't anymore. I have two cameras that I use. They're 16 megapixels, still capable of doing video, if I needed to. But I used to take out a camcorder. I don't even take that anymore. I just take my two cameras and I keep them in my pockets, and that's that. A lot of times, I snap pictures with my cell phone. But if I'm going to be taking a lot of pictures, I just use my cameras, and there you go. Because, like I say, I put big enough SD cards in them that, if I need to do a 30-minute video, it's not a problem.
Hmm.
I have a question.
So I've got a very basic question that I bring up to most people. After all these years of study, what do you think Bigfoot is?
That's a trick question, but
yeah. Well, everybody's got a different opinion.
Everybody has their own opinion.
Yeah.
I personally, I'm going to have to say it's of some type of human origin of some type. All the stuff that people talk about, cloaking and all. I don't believe in none of that.
Thank
right.
That just seems too, not to put anybody down, but it seems too bizarre to me that these things are able to cloak or mind speak or some of this other stuff that people come up with, and I just can't see a creature that size having the natural ability to bend light. I don't see that,
or however they do it, whatever. It's immaterial to actual science anyway. For now, that's a subjective experience.
The first thing that we need to do is prove that it exists first. Okay. Then go from there. But even if you have a body, you can have an 8-foot body laying in front of 20 different scientists, and they can probe it all they want to, and that still is not going to tell you that they can go invisible or they can go through portals or they can do this or they can mind speak. You're still not going to find that out. So, yeah, all that
stick with the
is, just prove that it exists first. Then we'll take it from there. So, that's the main focus, what people should have is let's prove it first, and then we'll take it from there. That's kind of the way I see it. I think it's a flesh and blood creature. The one that I had an encounter with here. Why did it stand there? Why didn't it cloak and disappear? What I'm getting at?
Yes.
We left before it did, so which is unusual. Usually, they see a human, man, they're gone, but we left before it did, so.
Well, we're down to about a minute and a half. Yeah, I tell you what, this show went by very quickly, Paul, because you were a fantastic guest.
I know you get me talking Bigfoot, and I'll talk for days on it.
We'd love
I don't
to
know how
have
to
you back.
I don't know how to shut up.
Yeah, we even forgot about the intermission.
Yes. We would love to have you back. I know you're busy, but I'm going to nag you probably in a few months to come back, and I know you have much more to tell. You probably just barely scratched the surface.
There's just so much, and then coming up, I'll be at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. I'll be down there coming up in May, and I know there's a couple other radio shows that I'm supposed to be on, and I was asked to speak at the Squatch Fest at Mohican State Park here in Ohio. That's coming up in August of this year, so I'll be there.
All right. Okay. Want to let everyone know that you can find Paul on his website. I know I'm going to murder it. Genosqua.
Yes, Genosqua.
Genosqua.
Yeah, Genosqua Project. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we named it that because, there's a lot of Bigfoot groups out there that's, Bigfoot this and Bigfoot that and Sasquatch this. So, wanted to be a little different, and, Genosqua is a native term for stone is giant. So, that's how we kind of came up with the name. But, yeah, we got the website. We're on Facebook. I got a YouTube channel. There's some videos on there. There's audio, of the one howl that, we actually captured a few, but I only put the one on there, that we captured in Carroll County. It's pretty good. You got to crank it up a little bit, though, but.
All right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for coming on. We really feel honored to have you here, and hope that we can get you back on again for part 2.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and sorry it took me so long to get it scheduled, but
Well, I know you're a very busy man. Sounds like it every weekend. So anyway, folks, we're going to go ahead and call it a night. We'll be back next week. We're going to have 2 different guests next week, 2-parter type show next week. So join us next Thursday night, 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific time. And everyone say good night, and Grass, roll that out, folks.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Today, Bridget Griffin shared a video of her daily yoga routine, 2 self-help articles, and her new blog called Build Your Inner Bridge with Bridge. Girl, your sharing has turned into oversharing. No worries, Bridge. Geico has some info worth sharing with your 7 blog followers, like how you could save money on your car insurance, update your policy, and report a claim just by visiting geico.com. How's that for building your inner bridge? Bridge? Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.